afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to the Raymond Hall Show. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Kwanzaa to each and every one of you. We are excited today. We have Mr. Akili with us today. And Mr. Akili is an organizer, and we're going to be talking about water as a human right. And we've often thought about how important water is, but we have someone today that's going to give us a different perspective, or a wider perspective of how water is not only a local or national, but a global issue. Mr. Akili, are you with us?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so very much. Just a little bit, Mr. Akili has over 45 years of experience as a labor, community organizer, and political leader. He has 3 points that he keeps with him. People make a difference if you go to them and seek to get their involvement. That's critical there. The essence of democracy is inclusion and participation. And finally, he has in his bio, we live in the richest country in the world. We can have a just and equitable society. That's keeping in line with what the Raymond Hall Show is all about. You know, our show is all about service, so we are absolutely honored to have Mr. Akili with us. Currently, he's the director of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute, project coordinator, corporate accountability international. He's a senior advisor for the Los Angeles Black Worker Center, the national field director for Social Security Works campaign, the Western Regional Field Director, NAACP, senior manager of field training, South Los Angeles Regional Field Director and trainer, and Obama for America campaign, senior political community organizer, SICU Local 1000, State Employees Union, special assistant to the California Assembly Speaker, Attorney Anthony R. Villaraigosa. I always just do his name injustice. Herb Wesson, and Assembly member and former Lieutenant Governor Merv Dimely, Executive Director of Nonprofit Federation for Housing and Community. And he has so many things that he's involved in. He lends his time and talents to so many things. So we are absolutely thankful again for him to take time to come to the show to talk to us about water. How do you do it all?
Well, I've done most of what you've listed over the years.
Oh, okay.
And it grows out of my commitment to racial and social justice.
Okay.
And so those activities over the past 40-some years has been, my effort at trying to live up to those three beliefs, that people make a difference if we go to them, that the essence of democracy is inclusion and participation, and we live in the richest country in the world. We can't have a just, fair, and equitable society. So I try to live up to those beliefs by doing the work that you just kind of listed off.
Right. Well, I completely agree with you, and I am sure the listening audience completely agree with you as well, because people do make a difference. And I believe that we are here in this nation for a reason, not necessarily a self-serving reason. Our contribution should be a contribution of service that serves and helps others. So that is what you are doing, and we are so thankful for it. Talk to us about, I briefly mentioned it in the introduction, but talk to us about water, a human right.
Well, first of all, it is a human right, because it's a God-made material that we absolutely have to have. You can live months without eating, but you can only live about 3 days or a week without water.
Wow.
And water makes up, a large portion of the planet. So it is a absolute essential to life on this planet. And so if it is, then it's a human right right that we have access to it. It's a human right that we are able to make sure that we have it on a regular and consistent basis. So that's and it's been also designated that way by the UN and by other international bodies.
Okay. Now, so where does the issues begin when it comes to that? Where does the when we spoke earlier, you spoke about how people want to take water as a commodity and then sell something that is a God-given right.
Well, starting with the commodification of it, if you can turn a natural resource like water into a commodity, then you can sell it. And if you can sell it, you can control it. And if you can control it, you can control people. And we see that happening with gas all the time, with the oil industry. So there has been an effort in the past 30 years to try to privatize water. That is, to bring in a third party that wants to provide water for people, but do it at trying to make a profit. And if that happens, then what you will have is profit-making corporations controlling a natural and human necessity, and that's dangerous. And so people have been fighting back against that. People have been not settling for that. People have been willing to, say no, you can't do that. Not with a human right like water. And the people of Lagos, a city of over 26 million people, one of the largest cities in the country, if not the largest city in the country, have been fighting back against it for over 4 years.
Okay.
But the people in Flint, the people in Pittsburgh, people in Baltimore, people in St. Louis, and other cities have been fighting back against efforts at privatizing their water. As a matter of fact, Baltimore just passed legislation that says you cannot privatize water in Baltimore, and that was after a 2-year struggle. So many people and groups around the world and around the country are saying no to water privatization.
Okay.
So
now,
that's what we've been focusing on.
When we talk about water privatization, are we talking about people claiming a body of water for private ownership, or are we talking about, in other words, not to call a name, when you go to the grocery store, you see all of these various brand names of bottled water. Is that inside of the discussion, or is that the topic of the discussion? It's
inside the discussion.
Okay.
An example is Nestle is pumping millions of gallons of water out of the underground in Michigan, and they're only paying $200 a year for a fee to pump that water that they in turn sell at a profit.
Wait a minute now. The place where the Michigan is the same state where Flint, where they had the water problem.
Yes.
So Nestle is pumping water out of Michigan?
Yep, out of the aquifers connected to the lakes around Michigan. They are pumping it out. It's fresh water. They treat it, and then they bottle it. And then they try to sell it. And what's so ironic and so absurd is that they are doing that, and they're paying $200 a year to do it. And then they turn around and sell it to the people of Flint, which is just absurd. I mean, the people of Flint depend on bottled water. They cook, they clean, and they drink it because they can't drink the water in their own city. So Nestle is making a profit, while at the same time the people in the region, less than 200 miles away, have been poisoned. So that's the contradiction. That's the problem that exists. And once you start, like I said, commodifying a natural, God-made resource, and you start making a profit out of it, then you can control the people. And what many of the corporations that want to privatize water, what they want to do is they want the government to build the infrastructure, and then they want to come in and manage it for a profit. That's what happened in Pittsburgh. The city of Pittsburgh contracted with a group, with Veolia, a French-based private corporation, to so-called manage their water system. And in the process of doing it, in an effort to make their profit, they brought in some less expensive water corrosion chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was less expensive. It didn't do what it was designed to do. And as a consequence, the lead rate in Pittsburgh jumped by 25%. And most of the people who were affected, are being affected, most of the families are black families. The same kind of thing happened in Flint. Veolia, the same company, was contracted to come in and study the water and see if it was okay. They came back with, after being paid $50,000, they came back with a report that said, well, the water smells and it's a little dirty, but it's okay. Well, that gave permission to the emergency manager to switch the water from Detroit to the Flint River, and that's what poisoned the people of Flint. So when you put in these private organizations, these private profit-driven organizations, into controlling a human right, they are going to make bad decisions. And when they make bad decisions, we pay for it. And that's that's why in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, January 26th through the 1st of February, there's a national summit on the human right to water, and bringing in people from around the world, including Flint and Pittsburgh, to talk about efforts at making sure that the human right to water is protected, the human right to water is secured, and they want to make sure that in Lagos, that their right to water is not privatized, and people are not making money off that human right.
Now, is this happening? I hear Lagos and Abuja. I hear America. Is this something that's happening all over the world? I mean, is the same thing going on in places like Germany, Switzerland, those kind of places?
No,
or is this where capitalism, where there's capitalism, there's an effort to capitalize off of water?
Yeah, it's happening in the Philippines, it's happening in India, it's happening in developing countries. It's happening in parts of South America and Central America. It's happening in developing countries, countries where they are beginning to build their infrastructure. They're beginning to look at how their countries can advance, and so that's where it's happening. And the World Bank is one of the culprits in this, because the World Bank is encouraging these companies like Veolia and Suez, companies which, by the way, they invest money in. They're encouraging them, and they're encouraging the government to contract with these companies in an effort to help the companies make more money. So the World Bank encourages Lagos to contract with Veolia or Suez, and winds up indebting. Lagos gets in debt to do it, and Veolia or Suez makes a profit. So it doesn't really benefit the people. It may benefit some of these corporations that deal with the World Bank, but it doesn't really benefit the people. And in order, like I said, to make a profit, there are two things you have to do. One, you have to raise the rate. Two, you have to lay off the workforce. That's exactly what happened in Pittsburgh. They laid off about 20% of their workforce, and part of that 20% were inspectors that go around and inspect to make sure that the water is clean and processed right. But in order to make that profit, they have to lay those people off, and they have to raise the rates, and that's the only way they can make a profit.
Okay, so this comes to why why is there not a bigger coordinated outcry about this? You know, the way it was portrayed, Flint was just an anomaly. And quite frankly, I have not heard as much about Pittsburgh as I heard about Flint. Why aren't we hearing more? I know it's a lot of foolishness, in my opinion, that dominates mainstream news. But then when you were speaking and you spoke of Nestle, I'm wondering, all of these news media companies, what other companies are involved in them. So if these companies that are doing this are part of the parent company that are all a part of the broadcast that we look at, it seems to me that they have an effort in us not knowing. Why isn't there more effort for us to know, for us to get be informed on what's going on? What do we need to do to be more informed about who's doing it, where they're doing it, how they're doing it? And if it's profit that's driving this thing, the people need to start doing things to address the profit, like taking them to court. I mean, now that's just my opinion. What are people doing?
Well, in the upper Michigan region, they have and are taking them to court, and have won some court cases, but a lot of it's political. Most of it, I think, is political. So, and if you look at the way our media is currently structured, corporate media gets advertisement from Nestle. Corporate media gets advertisement from Coca-Cola. Corporate media gets advertisement from these big water consumers, and so they don't want to talk about water problems because that could affect their advertising dollars.
Right.
I think some of it is now we live in an internet age that we can and should be able to find out some of this information on our own. One of the things that, like the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute did, one of the first things we did was we brought out the people to L.A. from Flint to tell their story, to talk about what was happening, how they were being poisoned, how they are made sick every day. I went to Flint, and one of the things that occurred to me almost from the time I got there was, wow, can I brush my teeth with this water? Can I shouldn't be drinking this. I mean, all of a sudden you start thinking about things that you and I take for granted, but the people of Flint have to constantly struggle with. Can you imagine a case of water for cooking, cleaning, and drinking? And that the difference between, you've seen the women around the world, carrying water in a bucket on their heads.
Correct.
They do the same thing in Flint. They go to these water sites and get a case of water. And that when it first started, they would get a case of water a week. They had these what they call water pods, and they would get a case of water a week. And it was just like women going down to the river with a bucket, getting water and bringing it back. It was just like that. And we like to think of ourselves as a developed country. The other thing that has happened over the past 25, 30 years, well, more, is that the federal government has invested less in infrastructure, forcing states and local governments who say that they don't have the money to invest in infrastructure, and they didn't do that. That was the case in part in Flint. They hadn't invested in the infrastructure in Flint or Detroit for more than 30 years. So they had these rusting pipes, they got the dirty pipes and the rest. And so part of what and your point about how come we don't know about this, is in large part because people take a lot for granted. I mean, right here in our own area in Los Angeles, the water, land, and air in Watts has been polluted for years because there used to be a dumping ground during the Second World War. And then they built apartments and a community around it. Well, the soil is polluted, which polluting the water, which wind up polluting the air. That's right in what?
Right,
in Compton.
right.
Right in Compton, Redwood. We had a case where people were complaining about how brown the water was, and ultimately the county had to step in and take responsibility for the water board down there.
Right, in Willowbrook and Compton.
Compton, yeah.
Right.
So it is happening, and it's happening around us, but we do take a lot for granted, and sometimes we would rather not know, because once we find out, then that means we got to do something about it, and quite frankly, I'm busy. So
yeah,
I don't have time.
But this thing has generational effect, because it's my understanding that lead is something that can once it gets in the body, it can affect the ability to reproduce, as well as cause other health issues.
Yep, and that's one of the biggest struggles, both in the people of Pittsburgh and the people of Flint have been demanding. Part of what certainly the people in Flint have been calling for is they want health care to be able to take care of the families and children in particular that have been impacted by increases in lead because their children have been poisoned, and the same in Pittsburgh. But because we don't have a national health care system, they have to demand health care for their children. And that was one of their original demands. The people of Flint had three demands. One, they wanted their democracy restored to them, because the reason this happened was because their democracy was taken away from them. The governor of the state instituted an emergency manager that came in an effort to save money, save $500,000, said that we can save money by switching our water from the Detroit River to the Flint River, because they were paying about $500,000, $1.5 million to Detroit for their water. So this emergency manager comes in and says we can save money if we use, at least temporarily, the water from Flint. Well, that was a bad idea. And the reason that they stopped doing that over 50 years ago was they knew that the Flint River was polluted.
Right.
And so that's why they had been doing it. But when you suspend people's democracy, so the people in Flint had no say. The city council in Flint had no say. And so you get this one person, an emergency manager. They want to save money, so they hook up to the polluted river and poison people. So that was one of the first things that the people of Flint wanted. They wanted their democracy restored to them. They wanted their city council to be able to make cities and the decisions, and they wanted their mayor. The second thing they wanted was they wanted the infrastructure replaced because they had corroded and dirty pipes, and that the water would keep poisoning the people. And the final thing that they wanted was health care for the families that had been poisoned.
Now, I remember, because I remember the mayor of Flint. She was very vocal, and I appreciated the position that she took. So I take it that was a return to local governing?
Yes.
Okay, and we all saw how they were replacing the pipes.
Yeah, in part, that was return to local government. They didn't get rid of the city manager until a year after the new mayor, a black woman, was elected.
Exactly.
So they didn't. So they still had this emergency manager, and the governor had subverted their democracy. The governor of Michigan, in 17 cities, most of whom were majority black, put in emergency managers because he thought he knew better how to run those cities than the people who were there, the people who were on the ground, the people who were responsible for running their cities. And so that kind of subjugation and elimination of democracy, when you do that, there's a price to pay. And unfortunately, the people of Flint are paying it. Yeah.
It may just be my observation, but it would seem that poorer communities, poorer people, and especially people of color, black and brown people are being attacked on several fronts. You have the privatization of education.
Yeah.
You have the privatization of drinking water. You have the exclusion of suitable employment. You have the targeting for incarceration, even though at the federal level now they finally put forth a bill to address the inequity or the disparities in sentencing. All of these long sentences for one type of drug, for one form of cocaine of the same drug than the other. And in reading what this bill is supposed to do, it's supposed to provide training while the people were there. And I was just surprised at some of the supporters of the bill, because they said that, hey, look, we want, eventually they're going to get out. And we want them to be able to have some skills and be able to get jobs and those kind of things, as opposed to coming back and coming back to prison. So it's high time. That thing went on for a good 50 years. From the 70s up to now is about 50 years. But it just seems like to me that we're being targeted on every front: water, education, economic, rights and liberties of freedom. How do we, in this highly technical time, we have movements, we have more elected officials that are from our communities. What, going back to what your banner, people make a difference if you go to them and seek to get their involvement. The essence of democracy is inclusion and participation. How do we take those things and use that? Because this water thing is very serious. I'm not saying it's more serious than others, but it's a very serious thing. If you don't have access to water, like you say, you're out of here shortly. And to know that people really want to privatize water is a big issue.
Yes, it is. And I think there's a couple of things in our own history that we could look to. I'm also a member of the leadership of Black Lives Matter LA. And
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason why Black Lives Matter LA was started was to end state-sanctioned violence in all its forms, social, political, and economic. And part of that grows out of these four conditions that particularly black people have to face. One is white supremacy. Two is institutional racism. Three is individual bigotry. And the fourth is mass denial.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the last one exists, it makes it possible for the other three to continue to function.
To continue to function, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But as
Now,
long as there's that mass denial. So part of our history here has been one of struggle. Part of our history here has been one of succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
We have succeeded despite the fact, or in spite of the fact, that people have done everything socially, politically, and economically for us not to succeed. And so part of, I think, what we have to do is constantly remind ourselves as a people that we are going to have to stand up and fight back, particularly since those three other conditions exist. First, white supremacy, and then the white supremacy leads to institutional racism. The institutional racism is enforced and supported by individual bigotry.
Right.
So you have to have all three in order for that to work. And as long as white supremacy is the fabric of America, then it makes it almost necessary for us to constantly, for black people, to constantly stand up and fight back and demand inclusion in the society we help build and maintain.
Now, I know you'll be leaving for the summit shortly. When does the summit start?
It starts the 29th. I think I'm leaving on the 25th.
Okay.
Because we have some planning dates that we're going to be involved in, and some workshops at setup. But the summit is January 29th through the 30th in Abuja, which is the capital of Nigeria.
Now, talk to us about. I read through the agenda, and it was quite impressive because you have keynote from the Nigeria water crisis. So they're talking on water from different places in the world. Yes,
and part of the reason that Abuja was selected as the city to hold the summit in was because a lot of the elected officials are there, a lot of the departments and agencies are there, and we want to bring attention to it, the international conditions that exist and the national conditions that exist. So part of the intent is to show to the people that one, this is a issue and a crisis, and two, that they want to develop real solutions against corporate control. They have been resisting it, but how do we come up with the next step, which is then, to end it, to make sure it doesn't happen.
Right, so, because you all have a breakout session that's water privatization, failed solutions to a global problem.
Yep. And we have people who are coming in from the Philippines where it failed, and other countries where it failed. And people who are going to be right from Pittsburgh where it failed.
Right.
So to talk about why it failed. And in large part, it will not succeed as long as you have to make profit. If and in order to make profit, you got to raise the rates. And you have to lay off the workforce. That's the only way you can make a profit from this, which is why in the rest of the world, for the past century, the government or water has been operated as a public good, like education, like other social responsible things. Once you start privatizing, as you referred to earlier, then you start introducing the corruptness. Then you start introducing how can we make more profit. Then you start introducing the people's interests are no longer as important. What's important is our shareholders. What's important is us making this profit. And once that happens, then you take shortcuts. You do things that you think will help increase your profit margin. You don't do things that serve the people.
Right.
And that's the problem. And I think you touched on it eloquently. And in partly, we have to say that education, water, healthcare are public goods that, we all got to, everybody may not get sick, but at some point, as you live and you get older, things break down and you need healthcare.
Right.
The same thing with water.
Yeah.
Same thing with education. We want an educated population to be able to make the decisions and carry on. I don't want somebody trying to make a profit off of educating my child.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said it seems to me, it's just my observation, that they're following the same formula once you presented it. The formula of letting the government build the infrastructure and a private company comes in to take over or quote unquote manage. You have with education, government tax dollars has built the school system that we were so proud of, that educated generations, that caused us to look to achievement in spite of, as you spoke about. And here again, now that infrastructure has been built, has been proven, now we have private corporations coming in where here in California, some of the teachers don't have to be certified at all. The curriculums in some places are questionable, and they are in some cases using the same facilities that tax dollars paid for, and that money is going into private concerns. Now, I'm just looking at the formula. They're doing it with water. The same thing. They're using the infrastructure of the justice system to put people in private prisons. I'm seeing a formula here, no matter what, I don't want to call us a commodity, but no matter what it is that they want to define as a commodity, they're using the same playbook. They're using the same formula. Let the taxpayers build it and then give it to us and let us run it and then build. I'm not talking in build as in construct. I'm talking about BILL, charge us for something that through our tax dollars we built and is rightfully ours. I'm seeing a formula here, and this is something that needs to be addressed.
Well, you're absolutely right. And we have allowed this myth that the private sector can do it better, faster, cheaper, while there's no evidence of that, but they keep saying it. And what the other thing that has accompanied that is the condemnation of everything public housing, public education, public television, anything public in front of it is bad. And anything that is operated by a government that we put and keep in place is bad. And so the private sector has been able to capitalize off that and use it so that they can make money off it. And I think that part of what we are going to have to accept is that we should have social responsibility. A social responsibility for me is making sure my children are educated, not making a profit for you. A social responsibility is me being able to have access to clean, safe water. A social responsibility is making sure that we have access to health care. Those are some social responsibilities that we all should be, we're all sharing, we all benefit from. And if we don't have it, then we all are hurt by it. And so those are the kind of things that, as many societies in most of the rest of the world, certainly industrial democracies, have agreed are social responsibilities that we all need to participate in, and that lends to the general good of the whole, of the nation.
Okay.
But in America, we want to try to have an element of the private sector running things.
Okay.
And my time, Mr. Hall, is running out. And
yes, it is. I want to
giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, I want to thank you for coming to the show and sharing this vital information with us, because we now know more about water, but we see three things. Yeah. We know about the water. What has been evident now is that there is a system that's being used, and that system looks the same no matter what we're talking about, whether we're talking about education, water, liberties and freedom, employment opportunities. The system that's being used, and you put it so correctly, anything public is bad. Things that are for the public good is bad, and that's the playbook that they want to use. But there is a part, I was reminded of a friend, former co-host. We had a show where we talked about the preamble, and in the preamble it talked about in order to form a more perfect union. Well, Mr. Akili today has talked about that more perfect union through the things that he talked about. People make a difference, and we need to invite them to get involved. A more perfect union. The essence of the democracy is inclusion and participation, a more perfect union. We live in the richest country in the world, more perfect union. So there is no excuse. There absolutely is no excuse. Mr. Akili, do you have any contact information? Is there any reports that you'd like to direct people to for them to read and look into? Or will you agree or think about after your trip coming back and following up with us here at the Raymond Hall Show to tell us what went on at the conference?
Absolutely. I would look forward to sharing with you the results of the conference, some of the decisions, and the value and meaning of the conference. So I look forward to that. You can always go, I'm a project coordinator with Corporate Accountability. You can always go to our website, Corporate Accountability, and there's a number of reports that we have published over the past 3 to 4 years about the failings of efforts to privatize around the world.
Okay.
So it's Corporate Accountability. It's, you just type that and it'll come up, and many of the reports that we publish are there.
Okay.
So, and I look forward to coming back and reporting to you.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. And again, we want to thank all of you for tuning in. Tell your friends and just tell everyone about the Raymond Hall Show. We don't sell anything here. We're not trying to make a buck on anything. What we're trying to do is bring you information that helps you to understand the value of service. We want to thank those men and women who are serving around the world in active military duty. We want to thank all of the people that's serving here domestically. We want to thank the teachers who are teaching the future leaders of this world. We want to thank the first responders who respond to people who are in crisis. This season, everybody has gifts that they offer. Let one of the gifts that you offer to someone else is a gift of service. My name is Raymond Hall, and we want to thank you again for tuning in to the Raymond Hall Show. Have a good evening. Have a good holiday.